You owe me back rent for living in my house as a kid. That's what my father said to me. 15 years after I moved out, he sent a spreadsheet, itemized food, electricity, clothing, even parenting labor. Total due, $132,780 with interest. He said it was about accountability. He said I needed to respect what he sacrificed, so I did what he taught me to do. I ran the numbers, and I mailed him an invoice. The text came in on a Tuesday at 6:14 a.m. I know the exact time because I didn't go back to sleep after reading it. Dad, we need to talk about the money you owe me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe he meant someone else. Maybe he'd sent it to the wrong thread. We hadn't spoken in almost 3 months, and even then it was just a stiff, obligatory phone call about his blood pressure and the weather. I didn't answer right away. I showered, I made coffee, I tried to pretend it was nothing. Then the next message came. Dad, I've been reviewing old expenses. You owe me back rent for living in my house as a kid. The word my was in caps. It always was. Even when I was 10, he would say it like that. My house. Not our home. Not where we live. Just his. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Back rent. For living in his house. As a kid. I'm 33 years old. I moved out at 18. I haven't taken a single dollar from him since. I pay my own mortgage now. My own utilities, my own groceries, my own therapy. But according to my father, I was somehow in debt for being a child. I typed slowly. Me. Is this a joke? The reply came instantly. Dad, does it look like a joke? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then a photo attachment came through. It was a spreadsheet. I wish I were exaggerating. Columns, dates, estimates. A header that read, interest, 15 years at 4%. At the bottom, a total, $132,780. He had itemized my childhood. I laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain couldn't process it. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Not anger, not yet. Recognition. This was not new behavior. This was just the first time he'd written it down. When I was 13, I broke a lamp in the living room. It fell off a table when I tripped over a cord. He didn't yell. He got quiet. Then he pulled out a notepad and wrote down the cost of the lamp, added tax, and said I would work it off. For 3 months, I mowed the lawn, washed his car, cleaned the garage. He deducted room and board from my imaginary earnings. At the end, he told me I still owed him $20. I remember standing there, sweating in the driveway, thinking I live here. But in his mind, I didn't. I rented space. I owed him for oxygen. My phone buzzed again. Dad, I gave you 18 years under my roof. That wasn't free. My hands started shaking. Me. Parents don't charge their kids rent. The typing bubble appeared immediately. Dad, don't twist this. I'm not charging you rent. I'm asking for accountability. Accountability. That word made my jaw tighten. Accountability was what he called it when he'd take my birthday money for safekeeping. Accountability was what he called it when he read my journal and said privacy was earned. Accountability was what he called it when I asked why I couldn't go to a school trip and he said, because I pay for this house. The truth was simpler. Everything was leverage. I didn't reply for a while. I drove to work in silence. I missed 2 turns because I was stuck replaying the spreadsheet in my head. $132,000. I tried to imagine explaining that sentence out loud to someone. My dad says I owe him rent for being a kid. It sounded absurd. But my stomach didn't feel absurd. It felt 12. When I got to the office, I sat in my car for 10 minutes before going inside. My phone buzzed again. Dad, I've been generous not bringing this up sooner. Generous. He wasn't asking. He was announcing. And if I knew him, this wasn't the end of it. By lunchtime, another message came. Dad, you make good money now. It's time you repay what you owe. There it was. He had been watching. I'd gotten a promotion 6 months ago. I'd posted about buying my house last year. I'd mentioned a vacation. Every milestone had been met with silence from him. Now I understood why. He wasn't proud. He was calculating. I stepped outside the building and called him. He picked up on the first ring. About time, he said. Are you serious? I asked. Very. You're asking me for over $100,000. Don't exaggerate, he snapped. It's a fair estimate. Of what? Of the cost of raising you. My throat tightened. You chose to have a kid, I said, and you chose to live under my roof. I actually staggered back a step. I was 6, I said, and I fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. That's what parents do. For free? He snapped. You think that's free? There it was. The ledger mentality. Every meal was an investment. Every ride to school was an expense. Love was overhead. I took a breath. You can't charge someone for existing. I'm not charging you for existing, he said coolly. I'm charging you for the privilege of living comfortably. Comfortably. We had one bathroom that barely worked. The heater broke every winter. I learned to eat slowly so he wouldn't comment on how much food I took. But in his narrative, I'd been living in luxury. I moved out at 18, I said. Yes, he replied, without paying a dime. I was a teenager. You were ungrateful. The word landed like a brick. You think this is about money? He continued. It's about respect. Respect. He wanted me to acknowledge the debt, to say he was owed, to reinforce the hierarchy. How exactly do you expect me to pay this? I asked. We can work out installments. Installments. Like I'd signed a lease at birth. And if I don't? I asked. Silence. Then, evenly. Then don't expect to be part of this family. My stomach dropped. I don't know why that still worked on me. I'm a grown man. I haven't relied on him in over a decade. But the threat of exile hit somewhere primitive. He knew that. You're willing to cut me off over this? I asked. I'm willing to hold you accountable. Accountable for being your kid. You don't get to rewrite history, he said sharply. You cost me. You think I didn't sacrifice? There it was again. Sacrifice as currency. I didn't ask to be born, I said quietly. Ungrateful, he repeated. We were going in circles, except he wasn't circling. He was tightening. You have 30 days, he said finally. For what? To send the first payment. He hung up, just like that. I stood there staring at my phone. 30 days. Like this was a car loan. Like I was delinquent. My hands were shaking again, not because I thought I owed him, but because part of me, some buried, conditioned part, was trying to calculate if it was easier to just send something small to make it stop. That realization scared me more than his demand, because it meant he still had access to that reflex, that old compliance, that urge to pay for peace. I drove home after work in a fog. When I walked into my house, the silence felt different, safe, owned, mine, not his. Then my phone buzzed again. A group chat notification, family chat. Dad had posted the spreadsheet with a caption, "Some people forget who carried them for 18 years. Replies came fast, cousins asking what was going on, an aunt saying, "Surely this is private." And then Dad again, "When children grow up and get successful, they forget their debts." My chest tightened. He wasn't just asking, he was shaming, publicly. I felt heat rise in my face, not humiliation, rage. Because this wasn't about money, it was about ownership. He didn't see parenting as responsibility. He saw it as an investment that hadn't paid out. I opened the spreadsheet again, scrolled through the numbers, room usage, utilities, food, parenting labor. He had put a price tag on loving me. And I suddenly understood something that made my stomach twist. This wasn't spontaneous. He had been thinking about this for years. He had kept records, imagined this moment, waited until I was stable enough to pay. Another message from Dad came through, private this time. "Dad, don't embarrass me by ignoring this. I raised you better than that. Raised you better." No, he raised me to flinch, to over-explain, to apologize for existing. He raised me to believe love had a price, and now he was trying to collect. That night, I opened a blank document on my laptop and stared at the cursor until it blinked like a pulse. Part of me wanted to type something vicious, something final, something that would make him feel even a fraction of what I'd felt growing up under that roof. Another part of me wanted to transfer $1,000 just to make the noise stop. That part scared me, because it meant the conditioning still worked. The next morning, he escalated. Of course he did. Another attachment. Updated spreadsheet, interest column. Same total, reinforced and polished, like he was making it more official by repeating it. There was also a note at the bottom. Payment plan option available. Failure to respond will be taken as refusal. Like this was a contract I'd breached. He posted again in the family chat. I tried to handle this privately. Some people don't understand accountability. Then he tagged me. My aunt replied, "Is this about money? Surely this is between you two." Dad answered, "It's about principles." Principles. The word made me nauseous. I typed in the chat, then erased it. Typed again, erased. If I defended myself, he'd say I was attacking him. If I stayed silent, he'd say I was guilty. That was always the trap. So I called my younger sister Anna. We hadn't talked much about Dad in years. We both kept it surface level, like if we didn't name it, it couldn't pull us back in. She answered on the third ring. "Did you see it?" she asked immediately. "Yeah." Silence. Then she exhaled slowly. "He told me about this last year." I froze. "What?" "He said one day he'd make you understand what you cost." I felt something in my chest crack open. He planned this? "He talks about it like a joke," she said, "but not really joking." "Why didn't you tell me?" She hesitated. "Because I thought he was bluffing," she admitted, "and because I didn't want to start something." Of course, starting something was always worse than enduring something. "Is he serious?" I asked. "He's spiraling," she said carefully. "His business isn't doing well." There it was, a motive. "Is he in debt?" I asked. "Probably," she said. "He won't say it like that. He says people owe him." People owe him. The pattern expanded in my mind. Former business partners, friends he'd cut off. Now me. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "Part of me wants to send him money just to shut him up." "Don't," she said quickly. "If you send $1, he'll treat it like admission." Admission. Of guilt. Of debt. Of hierarchy. That was the real goal. "Is he doing this to you too?" I asked. "No," she said. "Not yet." Not yet. Cold rage settled in my chest. If I paid, I wasn't just validating him. I was validating what he might do to her next. Around noon, he started calling, back to back, like an alarm. I ignored the first two. On the third, I answered. "What?" I said. "You think ignoring me makes this go away?" he demanded. "I'm at work." "So am I," he snapped. "You think I had the luxury of ignoring my responsibilities when I was raising you?" There it was again, raising me as debt. "You posted it publicly," I said. "What did you expect?" "I expected you to respond like a man." "And what does that mean?" "It means you acknowledge what you owe." "I owe you nothing." Silence. Then his voice shifted, softer, more dangerous. "You really want to go down that road?" I knew that tone, the one he used when he was about to weaponize something personal. "You remember that car I helped you buy when you were 19? He said. "You co-signed a loan," I replied. "I made that possible. And I paid it off. Because I allowed you to." I pulled the phone away from my ear for a second just to breathe. "You're rewriting reality," I said. "No," he replied calmly. "I'm reminding you who built your foundation." The foundation. I thought about the nights I'd studied alone, the jobs I'd worked without telling him because he'd call them distractions, the therapy sessions he'd mocked. "I built my foundation," I said quietly. He laughed, short and dismissive. "You built it with what I gave you." "What did you give me?" I asked before I could stop myself. He didn't hesitate. "Discipline, structure, work ethic, fear," I thought. "You gave me fear." "You also gave me panic attacks," I said. Silence. Then, sharp, "Don't be dramatic." There it was again. Any emotion that made him uncomfortable became exaggeration. "You have 30 days, he repeated. "And if I don't, I'll make sure people know exactly what kind of son you are." "I think they already do," I said. That did it. His voice rose. "Ungrateful, entitled. You think you're above me now because you bought a little house?" This was it. He wasn't after money. He was threatened. My independence was a loss of control. "You don't get to walk away from me like I don't matter," he continued. My throat tightened. That's what this was about. He went quiet. Then coldly, "You owe me." He hung up. I stood there shaking, not because I was afraid of paying, because I finally understood the game. This wasn't a bill, it was a leash. If I paid, he'd tighten it whenever he wanted. If I refused, he'd escalate until I broke. That evening, he showed up at my house. I saw his truck pull into my driveway through the front window. My chest tightened instantly. I hadn't invited him. He didn't knock. He tried the door, locked. Then he knocked hard enough to rattle the frame. I opened it halfway. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "You don't ignore me," he said, stepping forward like he owned the space. "You don't show up unannounced. I'm your father, and I'm an adult." The words felt strange in my mouth. He looked around my living room, taking it in. The furniture, the photos, the quiet. "So this is what my investment bought," he said. "You didn't buy this," I said. "I bought the years that let you build it." There it was again. Every accomplishment was his. "I'm not paying you," I said. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not warm, not proud, predatory. "Then I'll take you to court." "For what?" I asked. "For unpaid support. That's not a thing." "We'll see." He stepped closer. "You think judges don't understand sacrifice?" "This isn't sacrifice," I said. "It's extortion." His face changed. "What did you just call it?" "You're trying to scare me into paying you for raising me." He leaned in. "You owe me for every meal you ate." "I was a child. You were expensive." Something inside me snapped. "Then you shouldn't have had one," I said. Silence filled the room. Heavy, electric. His jaw tightened. "You think you can talk to me like that in my house?" he said automatically. I glanced around. "My house," I corrected. The shift was subtle, but it mattered. He looked around again like he couldn't reconcile it, like the walls weren't responding to him. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "You are." He turned toward the door. 30 days, he said again. Then he left. I locked the door behind him and stood there, heart pounding. He wouldn't take me to court. He knew it was absurd, but he would escalate socially, publicly. That was his arena. Later that night, an unknown number texted me a screenshot of his Facebook post. "After dedicating 18 years to raising a child, some parents are repaid with disrespect. Accountability matters." Hundreds of likes, comments calling him strong, calling him principled, calling me ungrateful. He hadn't named me. He didn't need to. The story was clear, and for a moment I felt that old familiar panic, the urge to defend myself, to explain, to beg. Instead, I sat down at my kitchen table and opened the blank document again. This time I started typing. Not insults, not rage, data, dates, receipts, therapy bills for anxiety tied to financial coercion and conditional affection, medical visits for stress-related symptoms, lost wages from panic attacks in my early 20s. The security deposit I lost when I had to move out abruptly at 18 because he changed the locks. Car repairs after he borrowed my vehicle and returned it damaged. Birthday money he held on to and never returned. I wasn't inventing anything. I was calculating. If this was a ledger, then I had one too. The confrontation didn't happen in court. It happened at my grandmother's birthday dinner. Of course it did. Dad loves an audience. I almost didn't go. Anna texted me that morning. "He's been talking about teaching you a lesson tonight. Be careful." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I looked at the envelope on my kitchen counter. Thick, sealed, certified mail receipt attached. I hadn't sent it yet. I wanted to see his face first. The restaurant was loud when I walked in. Too bright, too crowded. Dad was already there, seated at the head of the table like always. He saw me immediately. His smile was thin, performative. "Look who decided to show up," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably. Anna gave me a small nod. Dinner started normally. Small talk, weather, work, Grandma's health. Then, halfway through the main course, Dad put down his fork and cleared his throat. "You know," he said casually, "I've been thinking about accountability." There it was. Aunt Maria stiffened. "Maybe this isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," Dad interrupted smoothly. "Family should handle family business." He turned to me. "Have you decided how you're going to handle your debt?" The table went quiet. Forks paused mid-air. My heart pounded, but my voice didn't shake. "What debt?" I asked calmly. His eyes flashed. "The one we discussed." "You mean the one where you charged me rent for being a child?" A cousin actually choked on her drink. Dad forced a laugh. "See?" he said to the table. "Disrespect." "You posted it publicly," I said. "We're already past private." He leaned back in his chair. "I sacrificed 18 years of my life," he said. "And now that he's successful, he pretends he did it alone." I could feel eyes on me, judging, waiting. I paid for everything, he continued. Food, clothing, school supplies, sports. He never wanted for anything. That wasn't true, but it was close enough to believable that it didn't matter. He turned to me again. Tell them I didn't give you everything I could. I took a slow breath. You gave me fear, I said. Silence. The air shifted. Don't start with drama, he snapped. You gave me panic attacks, I continued evenly. You gave me a constant feeling that I owed you for existing. Ungrateful, he muttered. I reached into my bag slowly and deliberately and pulled out a folder. His eyes narrowed. What's that? He asked. You wanted a ledger, I said, so I made one. The table froze. Dad let out a short laugh. This should be good. I opened the folder. Not theatrically, not angrily, calm. I calculated therapy costs from age 22 to now, I said. Sessions specifically addressing anxiety related to financial control and conditional affection. Aunt Maria covered her mouth. I calculated lost wages from 2 jobs I quit due to stress-induced panic attacks, I continued. Dad's smile disappeared. I included the security deposit I lost when you changed the locks after I disagreed with you at 18. That was discipline, he snapped. That was homelessness, I replied. The word landed like a dropped plate. I added the cost of replacing my car after you borrowed it and returned it damaged. You never proved that was me, he said sharply. I didn't need to, I said. I paid for it. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I also added the birthday money you held on to and never returned. That was for your own good, he snapped. Everything was, I said. A few relatives were staring at their plates now. Dad's face had gone red. This is pathetic, he hissed. You're trying to make me look like a monster. I didn't have to try, I said. Gasps around the table. He stood up abruptly. You think you can humiliate me in front of my family? You humiliated me first, I replied. Publicly, he pointed at the folder. What's the total then? He demanded. Let's hear it. I closed the folder slowly. More than you're asking for, I said. That wasn't even the important part. The important part was what came next. If we're treating parenting like a transaction, I said quietly, then here's mine. I slid the certified envelope across the table. It stopped in front of him. You'll receive an official copy tomorrow, I said. Signature required. The room was dead silent. Dad stared at the envelope like it might explode. You're insane, he whispered. No, I said. I'm done. He didn't open it. He just stood there breathing hard. You think this makes you strong? He said finally. I think it makes me finished. That word changed something. Finished. Not angry, not negotiating. Finished. You're dead to me, he said. The phrase should have hurt. It used to be his nuclear option. Instead, I felt something settle. I was never alive to you, I said quietly. I was an investment. He slammed his hand on the table. You ungrateful— Enough! Aunt Maria snapped, surprising everyone. Dad looked around. The audience wasn't clapping anymore. The narrative wasn't clean. The mask had slipped. You're all turning against me? He demanded. No one answered. He grabbed the envelope and shoved it into his jacket. This isn't over, he said to me. Yes, I replied calmly. It is. I stood up, not in a rush, not shaking. I leaned down and kissed my grandmother's cheek. I'm sorry, I whispered. Then I walked out of the restaurant. He didn't follow me. For the first time in my life, he didn't chase. When I got to my car, my hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. I felt grief. Heavy, deep grief. But underneath it, relief. The envelope would arrive the next day. He would have to sign for it. He would have to see it. And for once, the numbers wouldn't be his. He signed for it. I know because I paid for delivery confirmation. I stared at the notification on my phone for a long time. Delivered. Signature obtained. There was something poetic about that. He'd wanted acknowledgement. He got it. Just not the kind he expected. The invoice itself wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was formatted like his spreadsheet. Therapy sessions from 2012 to 2023 tied to anxiety related to financial coercion. Medical consultations for stress symptoms, security deposit loss after the lock change at 18, car repairs after unacknowledged damage, lost wages from panic-related job resignation. Years of emotional labor under conditional support and control, total due, payment plan available upon acknowledgement of harm. At the bottom, parenting is not a loan. Love is not a lease. He called me that evening. I let it ring. He called again. Voicemail. "You've lost your mind," he said. "This is slander." It wasn't. Everything in that invoice was documented. Receipts, bank statements, medical records. He texted next. "Dad, if you think this makes us even, you're mistaken." That's when I realized something important. He still thought this was about even. Balance, power, control. It wasn't. It was about ending the transaction entirely. The next few days were predictable. He posted vague quotes about betrayal. He called relatives and told them I'd forged numbers. He told Anna I was unstable. He told Aunt Maria I'd been brainwashed by therapy. But something had shifted, because now there was documentation. Now there was context. Now there was a visible crack in the image he'd curated for decades, and more importantly, I wasn't responding. That was new. No defensive posts, no counter-arguments, no clarifying messages. Silence, not passive, intentional. He showed up at my house once more 3 days later. I didn't open the door. He pounded for 5 minutes, then shouted through the wood, "You think you can erase me?" I didn't answer, because that was the truth. I wasn't erasing him. I was removing myself. There's a difference. Anna called me that night. "He's furious," she said quietly. "I know. He keeps saying you embarrassed him." "He embarrassed himself," I said. She was silent for a moment, then she said something that stuck with me. "You know what he's actually mad about?" "What?" "He can't collect." That was it. Not the money, not the principles, not respect. Control. For the first time in his life, a debt he imagined didn't convert into obedience. He'd always operated like love was an advance payment. Now I'd close the account. A week later, I received the certified letter back. Returned to sender. He hadn't opened it. He'd written across the envelope in thick black marker, "Refused." I held it in my hands for a long time. Refused. He refused acknowledgement, he refused accountability, he refused reality. But refusing the invoice didn't undo it. The numbers still existed, the memories still existed, the damage still existed. And I didn't need him to validate any of it anymore. That was the turning point. Not the restaurant, not the confrontation. This. The realization that I didn't need him to agree in order to move forward. That night I blocked his number, then his email, then his social media, then any extended family threads where his messages could slip through like poison. Not dramatically, not with an announcement, just gone. No holiday visits, no birthday calls, no checking in, nothing. The silence was strange at first. My body kept expecting conflict, kept bracing for a message. For weeks, I'd wake up and check my phone before I was fully conscious. Nothing. And slowly, the absence stopped feeling like tension. It started feeling like oxygen. Do I miss him? Yes. But not the man he is. I miss the idea of a father. I miss the version of him I used to invent in my head when I was younger, the one who'd show up proud, the one who'd say, "I'm glad you're mine," instead of "you owe me." But that man doesn't exist, and pretending he might someday become that person kept me trapped. He wanted back rent. What he got was no contact. He treated parenting like a business arrangement. So I closed the account. Parents don't get reimbursed for raising their children. Love isn't a lease agreement. He tried to collect. Instead, he lost access. And that's the last bill I'll ever send him.